Welcome back to the Wisdom of the Philosopher series. Today, we're embarking on quite an intellectual journey into Plato's Phaedo. You, our listener, shared some really thought-provoking excerpts, and, well, our aim today is to unpack Plato's arguments, about the soul, its nature, whether it might be immortal, and what all that really means for how we live.
It's a fascinating dialogue, and the setting is just so incredibly poignant, isn't it? We're literally with Socrates in his last hours, and his companions, especially Simmias and Cebes, they really drive the conversation forward with their questions.
Yeah, they were disciples of Philolaus, the Pythagorean, so that background, maybe in harmony in numbers, probably shapes their thinking here.
Definitely. Their objections are quite sharp, and we need to really look at how the discussion unfolds, piece by piece, as we explore these, ancient but still relevant ideas.
Absolutely. So the scene is set. Socrates is awaiting execution. The main people talking with him are Simmias, described as loving argument, and Cebes, who seems a bit more maybe skeptical or questioning.
Mm-hmm. Incredulous is a good word for Cebes sometimes. And it's actually Cebes who kicks things off, asking about suicide. Is it lawful? He connects it to this idea that we're possessions of the gods.
Which is a powerful starting point.
It is, and Socrates responds with this real conviction he has. He believes he's going to a better place, to wise gods and better people than he's leaving behind. And remarkably, this belief seems to genuinely ease his grief about dying. He even frames the whole life of a philosopher as a kind of preparation for death.
How so? Practicing for death?
Well, by trying to separate the soul from the body's influences and distractions. Focusing on the intellect, on the eternal. It's like practicing the very separation that death brings. He calls it pursuing death and dying, in a philosophical sense.
That framing, pursuing death, it sounds stark, but it's about prioritizing the soul, the intellect, over the fleeting physical stuff. Okay, so let's get into the arguments. First, this idea that the soul existed before this life.
Right. Socrates brings up an older argument, something they had apparently discussed before. The idea that the living come from the dead. It's a cyclical view.
Implying a cycle means the soul must have been somewhere before it was alive in this body.
Exactly. And that leads directly into the theory of recollection and amnesis.
Ah, yes, the idea that learning isn't really discovering something brand new, but remembering.
Precisely. Remembering knowledge the soul possessed in a previous existence. It's about accessing what's already, in some sense, within us.
Cebes jumps in here with an example, doesn't he? Like, if you ask someone the right questions.
Mm-hmm. About geometry, for instance, using a diagram. You can lead them to figure out the answer themselves, even if they didn't think they knew it.
So where does that knowledge come from if it wasn't learned in this life? It suggests it was already there, latent.
Exactly. It implies innate knowledge. And Socrates builds on this. He introduces the concept of the forms, or ideas, these absolute essences, like absolute equality or absolute beauty.
Things that are perfectly equal or perfectly beautiful in themselves, not like the imperfect examples we see around us.
Yes. He points out that when we see two sticks that are, roughly equal, we recognize they fall short of perfect equality.
And his point is, how could we even know they fall short unless we already had some concept, some prior knowledge of what perfect absolute equality is?
Precisely. We must have known the form of equality before we started using our senses in this life. So our souls must have encountered these perfect forms, these ideas, before we were born.
Okay, so that establishes the soul's pre-existence, at least in this line of argument.
Yeah.
Now, how does he connect this to immortality, the soul living on after death?
Well, he starts by making a distinction. He contrasts things that are composite, changeable, and visible like our bodies with things that are simple, unchanging, and invisible like the forms, and he argues the soul.
And the argument is that composite things naturally break apart, dissolve, while simple things don't.
Right. What is simple and unchanging is much less likely to be scattered or destroyed. The soul, especially when it engages in pure thought, aligns itself with these unchanging, invisible realities, the forms.
Whereas the body is clearly composite, always changing, perceived by the senses. So it's naturally dissoluble.
Mm-hmm. He also adds another layer. The soul rules and leads the body while the body serves. This aligns the soul with the divine, the ruling principle, and the body with the mortal, the subservient.
So soul is to divine as body is to mortal. There's another pointer towards the soul's different nature.
Yes, he explicitly says the soul is like the divine, immortal, intellectual, uniform, indissoluble, and always the same. The body is like the human, mortal, unintellectual, multiform, dissoluble, and never the same. It's a stark contrast.
And he brings back that cyclical argument too, right? Living from the dead, dead from the living.
He does, using the analogy of sleeping and waking. Just as waking comes from sleeping, maybe being alive comes from a state of being dead, suggesting the soul exists somewhere, perhaps in the underworld, between lives.
Okay, these are some foundational arguments. But Simmias and Cebes aren't just nodding along, are they? They raise some serious challenges.
Oh, definitely not. Simmias comes in with a really clever objection, drawing on his likely Pythagorean background. He suggests the soul might be like the harmony of a lyre.
Okay, explain that. The soul as harmony.
Well, the lyre itself is physical, composite. The harmony it produces is invisible, beautiful, perhaps even seems divine-like.
But if you smash the lyre,
the harmony disappears instantly. It depends entirely on the physical structure of the lyre for its existence. So Simmias asks, couldn't the soul just be a harmony of the physical elements of the body? And when the body dies, the harmony, the soul just vanishes.
That's a powerful counter-analogy. It really hits at the soul's dependence or potential dependence on the body.
It does, and Cebes raises another tough point. He actually grants that the soul is probably much longer lasting than the body.
Okay, so he accepts it's more durable.
Yes, but he says longevity isn't the same as immortality. He uses this wonderful analogy of an old weaver.
The weaver and his coats.
Exactly. The weaver makes and wears many coats throughout his life. He outlives many of them. But eventually, the weaver himself dies, and the very last coat he wore might actually outlive him.
So the soul might outlive many bodies or lifetimes.
But it might not be eternally durable. Cebes worries that maybe each birth is the beginning of a soul's death, that it wears out over many cycles, even if it lasts longer than any single body. Perhaps it eventually perishes too.
Wow. Okay, so harmony and the weaver analogy, those are significant hurdles for Socrates' arguments.
Yeah.
How does he respond?
He tackles them carefully. First, he really leans hard on the theory of forms or ideas. He basically says, if you grant me the theory of ideas, I think I can show you the soul's immortal.
So the ideas are crucial. How does he use them?
He insists that it's the form of beauty itself that makes beautiful things beautiful, the form of greatness that makes great things great, and so on. This participation in the form is the true cause.
Okay, participation in forms. How does that counter the harmony idea, for instance?
Well, the harmony argument implies the soul is an effect of the body's parts. But Socrates argues the soul, particularly through recollection, exists before the body and is more akin to the ruling forms than a mere bodily effect. He also points out contradictions in the harmony view, like a soul being more or less of a soul, harmony which doesn't fit.
And what about Cebes' weaver, the fear that the soul wears out?
For that, Socrates develops the argument about opposites further. He introduces this principle of mutual exclusion, not just between direct opposites, but between things that always carry an opposite within them.
Like, can you give an example?
Like the number 3. 3 is always odd. It partakes in the form of oddness. It can never become even while still remaining 3. If even approaches, 3 must either withdraw or perish.
Okay, so 3 and oddness are inseparable. How does that apply to the soul?
He argues that the soul's essential, inseparable characteristic is life. The soul is what brings life to the body. Just as 3 brings oddness, the soul brings life.
And the opposite of life is death.
Exactly. So if the soul's very essence is to bring life, it can never admit the opposite of life, which is death, any more than 3 can admit evenness.
So when death approaches the body, the soul doesn't die.
It must withdraw. It retreats, undefeated by death. It is deathless, or athanatos. And if it's deathless, he concludes, it must also be imperishable and alethros.
That's quite a move, linking the soul essentially to the concept of life itself.
It's a crucial step in his final argument. It builds on the theory of ideas and participation. Fire brings heat and repels cold. Snow brings cold and repels heat. The soul brings life and must repel death.
So death doesn't destroy the soul, it just causes it to depart.
That's the argument. It directly addresses Cebes' fear. The soul isn't like a coat that wears out. Its very nature prevents it from being destroyed by death.
And he circles back to the nature of soul and body again, doesn't he? Reinforcing the distinctions.
Yes, reinforcing that the body is composite, changeable, visible, naturally dissoluble. The soul is simple, unchanging, invisible, perceived by the mind, not senses, and therefore indissoluble. It's akin to the divine, the forms.
Okay, so having presented these arguments, he then talks about what happens after death, the soul's journey.
He does. He describes how the pure soul, the one that practiced philosophy and detached itself from bodily desires, goes to the invisible world, divine, immortal, wise, and dwells with the gods in bliss.
But impure souls, those attached to the body,
They are polluted, weighed down, and don't depart in a pure state. They might linger around the earth, drawn to the physical, perhaps even being reborn into lower forms, or maybe into human forms suited to their character, like disciplined people becoming bees or ants, or social people becoming humans again.
So our actions and focus in life determine the soul's state at death and its subsequent journey.
Absolutely. The true philosopher, the lover of wisdom, spends their life purifying the soul, trusting intellect over the senses, essentially preparing for the separation. That's why they don't fear death.
He also contrasts the philosopher's virtue with conventional virtue, right? Like courage and temperance.
Yes, he suggests that for many non-philosophers, courage is often just fearing something worse than death, and temperance is just giving up some pleasures to gain others. True virtue, he argues, is rooted in wisdom, in understanding the forms, not in calculated fear or desire.
Okay. And then near the end, he addresses that lingering fear, the one Cebes initially voiced. What if the soul just disperses like smoke when the body dies?
He revisits the cyclical argument and the final argument based on the soul bringing life to drive the point home. But then he shifts gears slightly.
Into the myth.
Yes, he says he'll tell a charming tale, a myth about the afterlife. He acknowledges it might not be exactly true in every detail, but believes something like it is worth believing in, given the soul's immortality.
And this myth describes the true earth.
A much more beautiful, purer earth located high up in the ether, the pure heaven. He describes incredible colors, landscapes, plants, jewels. People live longer, have perfect senses, even converse with the gods.
Sounds idyllic. But there's also the underworld.
Yes, within the earth are vast chasms and rivers, fire, mud, water, and Tartarus, the deepest abyss. Souls are judged after death.
And their destinations vary.
Greatly. Those neither essentially good nor bad go to the Akarusian lake for purification. The incurably wicked are thrown into Tartarus forever. Those who committed great but curable sins suffer in Tartarus for a time, then might be released if their victims forgive them. And the truly holy go to live in the pure dwellings on the surface of the true earth, or even beyond, without bodies.
That's a complex geography of the afterlife, tied to justice and purification.
Yeah.
How does he wrap it all up?
He emphasizes that while the exact details of his myth might be debatable, the core idea that the soul is immortal and faces consequences or rewards based on how we lived is a noble risk to take. It's worth believing.
So the takeaway isn't the literal map, but the moral imperative.
Exactly. He encourages his friends, and by extension us, to focus on virtue and wisdom, to adorn the soul with its proper ornaments: temperance, justice, courage, nobility, truth, so it's ready for its journey when the time comes.
And he faces his own death with such calmness, based on this conviction.
With good cheer, as he says, believing he's going to good masters and good friends in the next world. It's a truly remarkable end to the discussion just before he drinks the hemlock.
It really is. Well, we've journeyed through Plato's Phaedo for this part of the Wisdom of the Philosopher series, exploring Socrates' final, powerful arguments on the soul. We hope this discussion has given you some valuable insights. What really stood out to you? Did any of Plato's arguments, or perhaps the challenges from Simmias and Cebes, resonate particularly strongly? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comment section below.
And of course, if you found this exploration engaging, please do like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us continue these discussions. Clicking that notification bell means you won't miss our future explorations into philosophical texts. Your engagement truly makes a difference.